You already know what to do. That's the uncomfortable part. The plan is sitting in your notes app. The principle is highlighted in some book. The strategy is clear enough that you could explain it to a stranger on the street. And your life still looks exactly the same. So the problem was never information. The problem is the distance between the page and the pulse. Charles Haanel built an entire system around this single nerve. The Master Key System says something most people skim right past. Knowledge does not apply itself. Read that slowly. A truth can be completely correct and completely useless at the same time, sitting in your skull like a tool you never pick up. You can own the map of a country you'll never walk through. This is where almost every ambitious person you know is quietly stuck. Their problem is a flood of answers. You've watched the videos, saved the threads. You could pass a written exam on discipline focus, on building something real. Yet the body of work isn't growing. The skill isn't sharpening. And a small voice keeps asking why someone who knows this much still has so little to show. Haanel's answer is brutal in its simplicity. Insight that stays in your head is borrowed. It's a quote you're renting from someone who actually lived it. The man who wrote those words made his fortune in the real world of factories and contracts, then sat down and described the inner mechanics that got him there. He wasn't theorizing from a monastery. He was reverse engineering his own results. So what actually happens in that gap? Why does the knowing fail to become the living? Start with the seduction of learning. Consuming an idea feels like progress. Your brain lights up the same way it would if you'd done the thing, and you walk away with the warm sense that you've grown. You haven't. You've rehearsed growth. You've felt the shadow of the climb, while your hands never touched the rock. The next book becomes a way to dodge the first lesson. The next framework becomes a hiding place. Haanel calls the deeper move concentration, but strip the old-fashioned word away and look at what he means. He means the ability to hold one thing fully, long enough for it to take root in how you move. Most people can't hold anything for 90 seconds. You sit down to build, and within minutes your attention bolts somewhere else, chasing a new tab, a new idea, a fresh hit of input. A mind that can't stay still transmits nothing from thought into reality. And here's where it turns personal. The gap is an identity gap. You know the principle, but you don't yet believe you're the kind of person who lives it. There's the version of you who reads about cold discipline and nods, and the version who actually wakes up and does the unglamorous rep when no one's clapping. Those two are still strangers. The whole game is collapsing the space between them. Haanel understood that thought becomes flesh only through repetition deep enough to rewire who you assume yourself to be. Think about the last skill you actually got good at, not one you read about. One you can do. Maybe it was code or a sport, an instrument, editing, lifting, writing. Something you showed up for day after day. You got it by returning to it on the days you didn't feel like it. Watching a streak tick up in something like Hone on your phone, link in the description, until the doing wore a groove into you. That groove is the real possession. Everything before it was tourism. Everything before it was tourism. So why do we keep choosing tourism over residence? Because applying knowledge exposes you. The moment you act, you can fail, and failure tells you something the books protected you from. As long as the idea stays in your head, it stays perfect. You get to keep the fantasy of the person you'd be if you ever started. The gap is comfortable. It's a waiting room where you get all the dignity of potential and none of the risk of the verdict. Haanel saw that a man who only studies success is using study as an anesthetic. Now flip it. What would it cost you to close even one gap this month? Pick a single principle you already believe, just one. Maybe it's that deep work beats scattered hustle. You've known that for years. Have you ever actually given a project 4 uninterrupted hours? Phone in another room, no exits. Most people who swear by deep work have never once done it cleanly. The belief is real. The practice is fiction. And the system reorganizes your life around the practice, never the belief. Haanel's method was almost embarrassingly physical for a man writing about the mind. He had people sit still. Sit completely still, controlling the body first, because a mind that can't govern a restless leg has no chance of governing a thought. Then control the thoughts. Then, only then, aim them at a single clear outcome held with total conviction. The sequence matters. Stillness, then focus, then direction. Skip the first step and the rest is noise. You feel the resistance already, don't you? The part of you that wants to skip to the visualization, the outcome, the dream version of the result, while quietly refusing the discipline underneath it. That's the gap, alive and well, talking you out of the only thing that closes it. Watch how the gap defends itself. It rarely shows up as outright refusal. It shows up as one more useful-looking detour. You tell yourself you need a better setup before you can really start. A cleaner desk, a new course, the perfect morning routine you read about last week. Every one of these feels responsible. Every one of these is the gap wearing a disguise, buying itself another day of safety while you call it preparation. Haanel saw that the mind will always prefer arranging the tools to using them, because arranging carries no risk of being wrong, and the cost of that delay compounds in a direction you can't see from inside it. A principle you act on today becomes easier tomorrow, because the groove deepens. A principle you postpone today becomes heavier tomorrow, because now you have to overcome both the original resistance and the shame of having known better. That's the quiet math running underneath your life. Every unapplied truth doesn't just sit there neutral. It rots into evidence that you're someone who knows, and never does. Stack enough of that evidence, and you stop trusting your own decisions entirely. There's a freedom on the other side of this most people never reach. Once you've actually lived a principle, you stop needing to consume content about it. You can scroll past the thread, skip the video, walk by the book, because the thing is already in your hands. The endless hunger for more input is just the body's signal that nothing you've taken in has been digested yet. The person who applies needs less, not more. They've turned a small number of truths into a way of moving, and that's worth more than 1,000 half-remembered insights gathering dust. Here's the reframe that rearranges everything. Treat knowledge as something you metabolize. Food you read about doesn't feed you. It has to be eaten, broken down, turned into the cells that carry you up the stairs. An idea you've merely understood is food on a plate you keep describing. An idea you've lived is muscle, and nobody can take muscle from you, because it isn't in your library. It's in your hands. This is why two people can read the same chapter and walk into completely different lives. Same words. One of them turns a single sentence into a daily act and watches it compound for a year. The other collects the sentence like a trophy and moves to the next book, forever stocking a warehouse of unused tools. The difference was never intelligence. It was the willingness to be changed by what they already knew. So watch what you do with this very script. Right now, you're feeling that pleasant click of recognition, the sense that something true just landed. That feeling is the trap. That feeling is exactly what you felt 100 times before, and it has built you almost nothing, because it asks for nothing. The click is not the change. The change is what you do in the silence after you close this. Haanel believed the inner world is the cause and the outer world is the effect. But cause has to actually fire. A thought held weakly, contradicted by your actions an hour later, transmits nothing. The reason you're visualizing hasn't moved your life is that you picture it for 10 minutes and then spend the other 15 hours living as the person who doesn't believe a word of it. Coherence is the whole secret. The inner and the outer have to say the same thing all day until the gap starts from lack of attention. And that's the discipline nobody sells you, because it doesn't fit on a slide. It's not a hack, it's a long, quiet insistence on becoming the thing instead of admiring it. You take one principle, you install it through repetition until it stops being something you remember and becomes something you are. Then you take the next one. This is slow, this is unsexy. This is also the only thing that has ever worked for anyone who built a life worth having. Look honestly at your own situation. The freedom you want, the body, the work, the independence, the mind that doesn't flinch under pressure. You almost certainly already know the principles that would get you there. They're not hidden, they're not advanced. They're sitting in you right now, fully understood and completely unlived. The bottleneck was never access. It was application. It always was. So stop hunting for the missing piece. There is no missing piece. There's a known principle and an unwilling hand. And the entire span of your future lives in whether you're willing to close that distance today with something small, something real, something done instead of understood. Haanel said the world within creates the world without, but the bridge between them gets built one applied action at a time, in the unwatched hours, by the version of you who finally got tired of knowing and started doing. Knowledge will sit there forever, patient and useless, waiting for the one thing it has ever needed from you. Your move, not your understanding. Your move. Pick the one thing, the principle you've believed the longest and practiced the least. Today, before the feeling fades, do the smallest honest version of it. No audience, no announcement, no plan to start Monday. Just the act. Because the gap between the person you are and the person you keep reading about will close the second you stop treating your knowledge like a museum and start treating it like a workshop. The tools were always yours. The only question left is whether your hands ever touch them.